I did not lose my marriage in one day, but something fell off. I became familiar and then invisible. No one realized what was about to happen. I stayed behind. I did not stand in front. I did not ask to be seen. I thought love meant support. I thought staying quiet was kindness. I thought stepping back was strength. In the beginning, my life felt normal. I woke up early. I made coffee. I listened. I waited. I told myself this was enough. I remember thinking this is what good wives do. I remember telling myself this is love. I did not feel angry. I did not feel trapped. I felt useful. I felt needed. Over time, things changed, but slowly, so slowly that I barely noticed. I still went with him. I still smiled. I still stood near him. But I stayed behind. I remember thinking it is fine. I remember thinking this is just a phase. I kept telling myself that nothing was wrong. I never lost him in one moment. I lost myself in small ones, quiet ones, ones that did not make noise. Then one day, he said one sentence, and everything ended. In the beginning, our marriage felt calm and steady. Daniel and I shared simple days. We ate dinner together. We talked about work. We laughed about small things. I remember thinking this is what a good life looks like. I had my own routines. I met friends sometimes. I read in the evening. I was not lost. I was still myself, but whenever Daniel needed me, I stepped back. I told myself it was natural. I told myself this is support. I believed love meant helping, not leading. I remember thinking if I stay strong behind him, we will both be strong. So I made small choices every day. I left earlier from dinners. I canceled plans. I waited at home. I said yes without asking questions. In those early years, Daniel asked for my thoughts. He asked before big meetings. He asked after long days. At night, he talked, and I listened. I remember thinking we are a team. I felt close to him. I felt useful. I felt needed. But slowly things shifted. Before he asked, but now he decided. Before he shared, but now he told me after. I noticed the change, but I explained it away. I remember thinking he is just busy. I remember thinking this is only work. I did not argue. I did not complain. I stayed quiet. I kept my promise, even when it was never spoken. I promised myself, I will support you. I believed that if I stayed behind, our marriage would stay strong. I did not see it as losing something. I saw it as love. Daniel became busier. His phone rang more often. His days ended later. I noticed it first in small ways. He came home tired. He spoke less. When I asked about his day, his answers were short. I remember thinking, he needs space. I told myself this is normal. I did not push before he asked for my thoughts. Before he said, "What do you think?" Now he decided first. He told me later. I remember sitting at the table, listening and nodding. I remember thinking it is fine. I stayed quiet. I stayed behind. We still went to events together. Dinners, meetings, small celebrations. I stood next to him, but not fully beside him. I learned to stand half a step back. When people took photos, Daniel stood in the middle. I stood close, but not in the center. No one asked me to move. I moved on my own. I remember thinking this makes things easier for him. I told myself this is support. Daniel smiled again one evening. He looked relaxed. He said, "It's just work." I wanted to believe him. I didn't believe him. I remember thinking maybe it will be okay. At the end of the night, he handed me his coat without looking at me. I held it for him like I always did. I stood there, waiting, and told myself, this is nothing. At a work dinner, someone spoke to him with a loud voice. They said, "You're lucky." Daniel nodded. He did not look at me. Others smiled and said he was confident now. They said he had grown. I stood there and smiled too. I remember thinking they were right. I stepped back again. I stayed close, but not inside the circle. I was there, but not really there. When we came home, the house was quiet. I made tea. I washed the dishes. I folded his jacket and placed it on the chair. The light in the kitchen felt soft. I turned it off slowly. These moments felt calm. I remember thinking, this is peace. My body relaxed, even when my thoughts did not. At that time, Daniel thought silence meant peace. He felt calm. Too calm. Some nights, I waited for him to speak. I waited for a question. He did not ask. I sat beside him on the couch. The space between us felt wider than before. I remember thinking, maybe tomorrow. I remember telling myself, do not make this bigger. I stayed still. At that time, Daniel thought everything was under control. He did not notice the silence. He did not notice how quiet I had become. I noticed. I felt it in my shoulders when I stood behind him. I felt it in my hands when I held his coat. I did not say anything. I thought, this is just a phase. Something was changing. I did not know what it was yet. I only knew that I was standing in the same room, but I was slowly leaving the center of it. The moment came without a warning. There was no fight, no raised voice. We were standing in the hallway. The light was on. The room felt normal. I remember thinking, this is just another evening. Then Daniel spoke. He said, I don't need you anymore. He paused for a second. Then he added, you'll be fine. You always are. I did not answer. My mouth stayed closed. My body did not move. I felt my hand on the door, holding the handle. I noticed how cold it felt. I remember thinking, did he really say that? My head felt empty. My chest felt tight, but I did not step back. Daniel waited, but only for a moment. He looked calm. I stood there, looking at the floor. My hand stayed on the door longer than I expected. I remember thinking, say something, but no words came. I nodded once, just once, slow, quiet. There was a long silence. No questions, no explanations. I could hear my own breathing. It sounded loud in my ears. I felt my shoulders drop. I felt my fingers relax. I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I remember thinking, this is real now. I turned the handle and opened the door. The air outside felt different, cooler. I stepped out without looking back. I did not take my coat. I did not take anything. My hand brushed the wall as I walked. I noticed that my legs felt heavy, but steady. The door closed behind me. The sound was soft but final. I stood still for a moment. I took one slow breath. Then another. The hallway was quiet. No one followed me. No one called my name. That was how it ended. Not with anger, not with noise, just one sentence and a door closing. I did not leave that night with anger. I left with quiet. I remember walking down the stairs and feeling each step. My hands shook a little, so I put them in my pockets. I remember thinking, do not run. I told myself, walk steady. The air felt heavy, but I kept moving. Outside, I stopped under a streetlight. I stood there and listened. Cars passed. Someone laughed far away. I remember thinking, this is my life now. I did not cry. Not yet. That's when the situation took a dark turn. My face stayed calm. My body felt tired but clear. I thought about everything I did for him. I thought about the questions I asked at night. I thought about the plans I helped shape. I remember thinking, if I speak now, nothing will change. I also remember thinking, if I stay, I will disappear more. Those thoughts came slowly. One after another, I sat on a bench and looked at my hands. They felt cold. I pressed them together to stop the shaking. I remember thinking, I do not need to explain. I remember thinking, I do not need to list my effort. I did not want credit. I wanted dignity. I wanted to leave without becoming small. There was one sentence in my head. I did not say it out loud. I did not send it in a message. I only held it inside me. If I stay silent now, I can still hear myself later. My phone buzzed once. I did not look. I put it face down. I leaned forward and took a slow breath, then another. My shoulders dropped. My jaw relaxed. I felt something break, but softly like a thread. Not a wall. I stood up and walked again. My steps were slow but firm. I did not look back. I did not ask for closure. I did not ask to be understood. I chose silence, not because I was weak, but because I was done leaving myself behind. That night, I walked away without noise, and that was my bravest act. After I left, Daniel's life did not collapse in one day. At least, that was how it looked from the outside. Things stayed normal. He went to work, he answered emails, he stayed busy. I remember thinking, maybe he is right. Maybe he really does not need me. At first, the mistakes were small. An email went out with errors. A number was wrong. The message felt rushed. No one said anything. No one blamed him. Daniel told himself, it's just bad timing. He said everyone makes mistakes. I could imagine him fixing the email, sitting straight, focused, calm. He believed the next one would be better. He worked late again. He opened files. He changed plans. He told himself this was normal. He told himself he was still in control. I remember thinking this was how he always thought. Certain, efficient, alone, but the problems did not stop. One decision felt rushed. Another plan felt thin. A meeting ended earlier than usual. No one asked him to stay. No one asked, what do you think? I remember that question. I used to ask it. Daniel stayed at his desk longer. The screen stayed bright in the dark room. He stared at it without typing. His hands rested on the table. Still quiet. He thought it would pass, but the silence stayed. No one reminded him to slow down. No one asked about the risk. No one filled the quiet gaps anymore. I was not there to do it. The space stayed empty. Regret did not arrive loudly. It did not shout. It slipped in through pauses, through quiet rooms, through moments that felt normal until they didn't. After some time, memories came back to him. At least that is what I believe now. The questions I used to ask returned in his mind. Have you thought about the risk? Is this really safe? I asked those questions many times before. Back then, he brushed them away. Later, they stayed. I imagined him sitting alone, repeating the same thought. It was just bad timing. Imagine that sentence playing again and again. At first, it sounded strong, logical, clean, then slowly it lost weight. I imagined him pausing and thinking, why does this not feel true anymore? The sentence stopped protecting him. There was no apology, no message, no call, just space. I did not wait for words. I felt the emptiness instead. Some things do not need to be said to be understood. I picture him opening his laptop. The screen lights up the room. He looks at it for a few seconds, not working. Just looking, his hand rests on the keyboard, but nothing happens. Then he closes it. The sound is soft but final. He sits there longer than usual. The room stays quiet. No one asks him anything. No one checks his choices. No one fills the silence. I used to do that. I used to sit beside him. That is how regret lives sometimes. Without sound, without drama, just a space where meaning used to be. Some people disappear slowly, not from the room, but from the meaning. Nothing changed overnight. Life did not become easier. Time passed. Not in a clean way, not in a straight line. Days moved slowly, then faster. I found a small part-time job. Nothing big, just steady hours and quiet tasks. I worked with my hands. I followed simple steps. I remember thinking this feels safe. In the evenings, I went to a class. I sat in the back at first. I listened more than I spoke. Friends came back, one by one, coffee after work, short walks, soft laughter. I did not explain everything. I did not need to. I remember thinking, I am allowed to be here. Life did not turn bright overnight. Some mornings felt heavy. Some nights felt long. I remember thinking, keep going. I told myself, today is enough. One morning before leaving the house, I stopped near the door. The room was quiet. I looked at the chair. My coat rested there. I picked it up. I felt the weight of it in my hands. I put on my shoulders myself. No rush, no mirror. I remember thinking, I can take care of this. I stepped outside and closed the door gently. The air felt cool. I stood still for a second. My breathing slowed. My shoulders relaxed. Nothing dramatic happened, but something felt different. I was still quiet, but I was no longer behind. Some people do not stand on the stage, but they hold the whole building. When they're gone, you finally understand their value. These words stay with me now. I repeat them in my mind. I see how quiet support works. I see how easy it is to miss it. You don't lose people in one day. You lose them when you stop seeing them. When you stop asking, when you stop listening, when presence feels normal, not precious. I think about how often this happens at work, at home, in love. Support does not shout. Care does not push forward. It stands close and waits. When it is there, everything feels easier. When it is gone, the weight appears. That is the lesson I carry with me. Seeing is a choice, and meaning lives in what we choose to notice. In modern relationships, many people are not abandoned. They are not betrayed. They are simply seen less and less. Support becomes quiet. Effort becomes familiar, presence stays, but recognition fades. This happens slowly, and most people do not notice it while it happens. When you give support every day, others can forget to see it. Not because they are bad, but because the human mind gets used to what is always there. If you always step back, others learn to step forward alone. This is not about strong boundaries or harsh rules. It is about letting your role be visible, letting your effort be named, letting contribution exist in awareness. Appreciation often comes too late. People notice it when something stops working. When a question is no longer asked, when a quiet voice is no longer there. It is useful to pause and look again. Who makes things easier for you? Who thinks ahead so you do not have to? This reflection is for both sides. You may be giving too much, or you may be receiving without seeing. Most relationships do not end because of one big mistake. They end because one person slowly becomes unseen. Sometimes the person who holds your life together is the one standing quietly next to you. As you reach the end of this story, one question may stay with you. You may wonder if you have felt this too. Have you ever stood next to someone but felt unseen? In a photo, in a room, in a relationship, you may pause when you think about that. Some people hear this story and stay quiet. Some feel it deeply, even if they say nothing. If this story felt familiar to you, you can write, "I see you." Sometimes, being seen begins with a few simple words. And if this story stayed with you, you can like the video and subscribe. So more quiet stories like this can reach the people who need them. But the truth was far more disturbing.